So it finally happened. It finally happened. We saw, a college player list that was not just who are the top 5 players to have gone to UConn or something similar to that. And it is the top players in women's college basketball of all time. And they had the correct one too. And by the way, no issues whatsoever with Stewie being number 1. They had the correct one too. The reason why is that while winning does matter, the only way, like, if Caitlin Clark was, for example, like Elena Deladon, if she was like Elena Deladon, or Kelsey Plum, what was the best Elena Deladon did in college? But again, like, Elena Deladon was unbelievable. Let's not genuinely, to be honest, like, her team were a 6 seed at times. They never really did great, but her as individual was fantastic. Still not as good as an individual as Caitlin Clark. Same with Kelsey Plum, with her Washington team. I like the fact Sheryl Swoopes, and look, we can again separate the art from the artist. I think she's one of the worst things that has happened to the WNBA in terms of her being pushed as one of the faces of former players. It has been one of the worst things that's happened to the perception of the WNBA. But you can be honest. Sheryl Swoopes not being on ESPN's honorable mentions is crazy. And I actually think you can make the argument that she could deserve to be in that top 10. Obviously, they have Lynette Woodward in because she had the record before Caitlin Clark. But Caitlin Clark broke every single record. She broke every single record, and she never played with another All-American. She played with 2 or 4 years. She played with one player. One player who made the WNBA. She played with future accountants, occupational therapists, dentists, chemical engineers. Whereas, again, I'm not going to claim to know a lot about Chamique Holtzlaw's Tennessee team. But all I know is that, like, Tennessee and UConn were the big 2. They were the big 2. Like, they were the 2 colleges that you went to. That was the big rivalry. They were the 2 colleges that you went to compete. And I think maybe you can make the argument for Angel Wilson. I think did something not too dissimilar to Caitlin Clark, but it's not like Angel Wilson didn't play with another WNBA All-Star. Like, everybody's talking about, Angel Wilson is, like, she was the first big recruit. She was the first big recruit Don Staley got to South Carolina. That is the fact. But it is also, like, the first super, super high recruit. But the fact is that a year before, that team also had, like, it also had a WNBA All-Star. There isn't a WNBA All-Star in that Iowa team. There definitely was not. And again, that South Carolina team, it was the start of what was going to be a reign of dominance. And they had a lot of players. Who was on that South Carolina team, actually? Like, everybody talking about how, Angel Wilson... Basically, someone said what Angel Wilson did was the same as what Caitlin Clark did. And I think her going to South Carolina and not going to a UConn and stuff, that was huge. That was huge. So it's not like I'm going to say there's no credit there. And I do think she's well deserves the spot in the top 10. But, like, people saying, she carried that team. Ty Harris is a starting level WNBA point guard. Alicia Gray is an all-star. Herbert Harrigan is a good WNBA player. And it's not... So that's what it took to win. And fair play. Fair play to them. Like, winning's hard. Doesn't matter who you have. And then the next year, they still had Ty Harris. They still had Angel Wilson. They had Herbert Harrigan. And they had Tia Cooper, who was also in the WNBA. So they had 4 WNBA players. And even though they lost Alicia Gray, what did they lose in Sweet 16? What did they lose in? They lost in the Elite 8? They lost in the Elite 8 with 4 WNBA players. Caitlin Clark, in college, made back-to-back championship games without another All-American on her team, without another player, with Kate Martin, who is a glue player, as her next best player. She broke every single individual record. There is nobody that has willed a team to a higher height than Caitlin Clark has in college. But when you are the winningest player and when you have all the accolades and everything, like Breanna Stewart deserves to be, like, that is to argue the winning argument because of how good Caitlin Clark was individually. You have to be a Breanna Stewart level winner. And Breanna Stewart won 4 years in a row, barely lost a game in college. She did play on super teams, but like, it doesn't matter. And it's so funny. I'll talk about this a little bit tomorrow. It's like the rival fans furious at this, where it's like the argument is two. It is between Stewie and Caitlin Clark. This is your Bill Russell versus Will Chamberlain argument. It's your Bill Russell versus Will Chamberlain. Bill Russell had 11 rings. Will Chamberlain was, and Bill Russell had 11 rings. Bill Russell was the best player on the best team, and Bill Russell's teams were better than Will Chamberlain's teams. But Will Chamberlain put up the crazy numbers, and also, without Will Chamberlain, his teams were going nowhere. Will Chamberlain was carrying teams to almost beating Bill Russell. Like, he lost so many times with, he lost so many times to Bill Russell in Game 7s and didn't have even remotely close to the team of that Celtics team had. If you took both of them off their teams, the Celtics team beats them by 50. But because Bill Russell won, it's like, oh, one's a winner, one's a loser. It's like, well, no, one just is part of the greatest dynasty. One is just part of the greatest dynasty that has ever been seen. But it's the same argument. There's good arguments either way. And with Stewie, she's the winningest player in college basketball history. And it's not like she put up bad numbers. Like, she had she averaged 17.6 points and 7 boards. But also, Breanna Stewart won a national championship, scoring 8 points in the championship game. She scored 8 points in the championship game, and she won one of those Final Four most outstanding players with an 8-point championship game. So, like, it was one of those things when it came to Stewie where it's like, Stewie could have a bad game and her team could win. If Caitlin Clark had a bad game, it didn't matter who Iowa were playing, it was over. Like, it was over. And you're seeing Iowa now, they replaced her with a WNBA level player in Lucy Olsen. And they got in an elite freshman class, and they're suddenly a 6th seed. I do like this Iowa team now. I do like them. I think they're a lot better than a 6th seed, but Stewie left UConn, and they had an undefeated season the next year. Like, Stewie literally left UConn, and I know they lost in the tournament. They were like 33-0 up to that, or in the regular season. So, it's not like, or was it 30-0, whatever the record was, they were undefeated. So, whatever it was, like, as much as they haven't won since Stewie, it's not like UConn for those next 2 years. In the next 2 years after Stewie, it wasn't like a complete freak situation when they didn't win both of those years. Like, they needed the shot. Was it the Arike shot to beat them the first time? And they were still unbelievable without her. But then when it came to Caitlin Clark, Iowa struggled so much. And ironically, after Angel Wilson left, and again, you could make the argument that what Angel Wilson started for South Carolina is the reason they've been able to keep it on with Dawn Staley. Brittany Griner was unbelievable. Brittany Griner, the fact that she won a title right before Stewie was there, and like, there were still players in UConn at that stage. Maya Moore won multiple national championships, and Maya Moore, as far as her individual stats, looked better than Stewie. Cheryl Miller was Cheryl Miller. Diana Taurasi, I don't agree with Diana Taurasi being third. I don't agree with that. I will stand by that. I do not agree with Diana Taurasi being there. And Candace Parker should be in the top 5. I wouldn't have Taurasi in the top 5. If I was making my list, it goes, again, I would have Clark 1, Stewie 2, but I have actually no issue with Stewie being above Clark. I have no issue at all. And it's so funny, like, the rival fans are posting things, Breanna Stewart saying that she needs to win a title to be considered one of the greats of college basketball. Saying, yeah, she definitely does. It's like, imagine if somebody posted a fake quote being like, Caitlin Clark says you need to have a season averaging 20 points per game to be considered one of the greats of college basketball. Which Stewie never did. That's not a knock on Stewie. Like, if you're gonna have a knock on Stewie, on Caitlin Clark for not winning with an Iowa team that had that may not have even made the tournament without her. If you're not with Zinano. With Zinano they would have, to be fair. Maybe not that first year. They would have made the tournament, but they wouldn't have made the tournament all 4 years if she wasn't there. All 4 of those years. And if you're trying to make the winning argument against Caitlin Clark, you can make the stats argument against Stewie. And then people clap back saying, oh, but like she had all these good players. She was never shooting that many shots. Well, yeah. That is a perfectly good reason for why her stats don't match up to Caitlin Clark's. But the winning is also a perfectly good reason that Caitlin Clark didn't have the damn teammates to compete. But yeah, and she still made 2 championship games. And Stewie's stats were still good. It's like these two are the top 2. We could literally debate forever, but it is a personal preference between these two. But these are the best. These are the 2 greatest of all time. These are the 2 greatest of all time. But again, I don't know quite enough. I think Candace Parker has to be somewhere in the top 5. Taurasi should not be in the top 5. And also, I don't know enough about Cheryl Miller's college career. There is a chance Cheryl Miller should be in there as well. I do not know enough about Cheryl Miller's to really rate her. But like Cheryl Miller might be up high, and who knows, maybe Cheryl Miller should have been number 1 if I had done more research on it, but I don't. So for me, from the players that I remember seeing, I don't remember Taurasi, but I do remember Taurasi early on in her career. I remember little bits of Candace Parker, because that 2008, there used to be this channel called NASN in Ireland, where it was just sports, where it was just North American sports, but it was just college sports. Like, how much of Candace Parker's Tennessee team I watched when she was in her final year, and then my TV lost that channel right before the tournament. Man, I was the biggest Tyler Hansbrough UNC guy ever, and then out of nowhere we didn't have the TV, so I didn't even watch the tournament that year. And then Greiner was kind of the year where I watched a bunch of WNBA. She was ridiculous for Baylor. Like, she was so good at Baylor, they were thinking about drafting her in the NBA draft. And obviously Maya Moore is Maya Moore. But anyway, yeah, that is pretty much it. That's the video. I'll see you guys.